Well, good morning, everybody. It's a lovely, windy Saturday morning here in the UK. They are forecasting really strong winds, and it's a perfect time to sit down with your crafting things and start doing some projects. So today I thought I'd show you just a quick way to actually distress a page that you might want to use, and I'm talking about mostly magazine pages which have got big images. Perhaps you like the colors but you don't like the design so much, or perhaps it just looks a bit flat, or it looks too much as though it's come out of a magazine. So let me just show you a little bit that you could do with just using a little bit of sanding paper or an emery board and a stencil. So it's really quite easy. So I'll start off by showing you something that I have already done here, just so that you've got an idea. Let me just move these out the way. Right, so this was from a glossy magazine. It's quite a thinnish paper, and it's obviously printed on both sides. And I hope you can see these lovely little sort of vein-like marks I've got here. I used a stencil that actually has like a bark texture on it, and I repeated the design several times. You can see up here on the sky part, it's got quite a nice open design, but it just has, in a sense, pushed the design into the background but added a little bit more texture, so it doesn't look quite as much like a magazine picture. And obviously with this lovely texture that I've got here on the bark and stuff, with the stencils of the bark, I could nicely cut out journal cards, stick this on the back of a journal card. I could make tags, I could do all sorts of things. I don't have to use this as a whole image. Here's another image where I've actually taken a star-shaped stencil. You can see it quite nicely here in the corner, and I've just created a little bit of texture using that. But I have done it also over the flower border, and I really like that. It's actually come out rather nicely, so I'm very pleased to have tried a star on there. You know, it's not something you would automatically think of, a star on plant material. Anyway, let me show you how to do it. It's really quite fun. So first of all, not all paper works the same way. So you're going to need to perhaps just have a piece of test paper from your magazine or whichever pictures you're using, just to try it out to actually see. So this is a piece of Daphne's diary that I've got. It's a page that I probably won't use all of. I'm probably going to cut that out, and I might use a little bit of that sort of strip, but for most of it I'm not going to use this page. So I'm actually going to use this as a test just to see how my designs come out. I've got a sanding block here, and I'm going to be using that, but I'll also show you how to use an emery board. And for this one, I think I'm just going to start off using a star stencil. So what you need to do is actually place your stencil underneath your design, and you can use a little bit of washi tape just to secure it. But because my stencils are fairly small, I'm just going to use my hand. Now, the big secret here is when you are starting to work over your stencil, you must have your sanding tool, whether it's an emery board, it might be one of those sanding nail files, those spongy ones, or just sandpaper, and you're wanting to work with a very fine sandpaper. You must work with everything flat. So if you're going to use a nail file, you've got to actually work with it flat down. If you work at an angle, the chances are that you're going to just dig through into your paper and make a hole. So as I'm working, what is actually happening is that it is rubbing off a little bit of the printed text, and it does look a little bit dirty when you do this, and you start to think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm making a mistake, but you will find that it actually just adds to your design. So if I'm looking at this one, I can see that on this particular paper, my nail file is not actually that brilliant. So I'm going to move over and use the sanding block. And again, this is just going to be flat. I'm working very lightly in a circular motion. And just repeating until I can see my design popping through. And I can see with this one, it's a lot more work to get the design coming through there. So I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm going to now just work on some magazine paper with the same stencil so that you can see the design. This one's got rather nice and colourful, it's festive, it's tea party theme, and I'm just going to use my star. Now, if your page is wider than your actual stencil, because my stencil just comes from finger to finger, and you wanted to use the whole image, don't sand right up to the corner, because then you can actually just get a repeat of the design. And make sure then that you get your edges of your stencil off your image. This one is a thinner paper, so you're going to have to sand incredibly lightly, and it will obviously start to work a lot quicker. So I'm just holding my paper with my hand. You can see that on the dark green side the little white marks are showing through, because essentially what I'm doing is just rubbing off some of the ink that's already on there. Just doing this very gently. Rather take your time doing this than try to rush it, because the chances are then you'll just make a hole. You can go over certain areas if you find that you haven't lifted off enough of the ink, but sometimes it's quite nice just to have the variation between a solid design and the ink coming off. Just in circular motions. And it will probably take you about maybe 1 or 2 minutes just to gently work over your design, depending obviously on the size of your stencil. Some designs will work better than others. I found that the designs that were very large and open didn't work as well as the ones that have smaller designs. So here we go. Let me show you. This has come out really nicely here. You can see on this one I've gone over there too frequently, so I've sanded right through. So that's something that you just need to be careful of, but it doesn't mean to say I can't use the whole thing. But I love the way it's actually distressed this paper. So I'm going to do the same page but just use a different, actually let me try something different. Let me take this design here, which is coffee, and I've got this coffee splatter stencil. So I'm just going to put this underneath and just do 1 or 2 of the splatters. Let's see what happens with this one. Because this paper is thicker, I'm putting a little bit more pressure on, but still being cautious. This one's coming up nicely. So you can see here this little design of the coffee stencil, which is that. You can see that design has come up there, which is really nice. And if you look at the contrast between this section, which was very similar to there, which had these white leaves and the background, that has just broken it up a little bit more and made it more interesting. So what's going to happen if I do this design over an image, like perhaps the little cookie there? Shall we try one of those? Here's another paint splat. Let's try that on the biscuit here. There we go. That's just created a lovely little texture. So you can play around with this. So I know that this star stencil works nicely. I've now tried this. It's got paint splats or coffee splashes, and that actually works nicely. So I have here another design. I could use that lovely sort of swirly design, or I could use this repeat pattern. And I think because this has got quite small images and it's quite close together, I'm actually going to try some of this on the bottom half, and I'll try the swirly design at the top. So let's see where we go with this. This I think would make a lovely tag with this texture. Does seem funny sanding paper, doesn't it? I must say, when I did this I thought to myself, oh, people will probably think I'm bonkers, but they probably do in any case without me having to do this. We had rather a sad thing happen at work this last week. I arrived into my field where I work to find that 2 of our apple trees had been vandalized, and one had been pushed over completely so that the stem had virtually snapped off, and the other one was pushed so flat that like the tree is growing at like 25 degrees to the ground with fruit on it. Not quite sure how we're going to remedy that, but I have a colleague who is a horticulturist, so I've asked his advice and he's going to have a look at it on Monday. But yeah, that was rather sad to find that somebody wants to actually just do that just to be otherwise. Right, this is coming up rather nicely. I like this. So if I have a look at that, I've got rather a nice texture here, which has just softened this image so that it actually looks more vintagey. And obviously, if you wanted to, you could work with your inks and things on top of that. So here I've got quite a nice splash of blue, and I'm going to try the swirly one because this does remind me of the ocean. Shall I do it this way? Yeah, let me do it this way. You can see on the plain colors how just the design just pops through, and it's much more sort of dominant than the patterned ones. But I do like it on the pattern, you know, on a patterned, when I say patterned, I mean a busy background, because it actually just breaks it up as well. There we go. And you don't have to do the whole thing solidly with the design. You could leave some bits, open spaces. So for this, if I was to make this into a tag, I might decide not to sand this part off and just do one side. So let's see how that looks. Now that's rather lovely. It's given a nice sort of wispy feel, and you can see that if that was going to be a tag, yeah, like that, it would rather be nice. So let's try another one with a magazine picture. This is again it's like a gardening, oh, this one says Living 22. I think this was maybe, was this a South African magazine? I can't, no, English Cream Teas, must be an English one. But it's a nice sort of thin glossy magazine, and it's got 2 pages that are printed. I think this one's going to show up nicely on the dark, and I'm just going to do this in frame. Let's pull this down a little bit. There we go. So again, sanding flat. And you see on the dark one how beautifully it shows up very, very quickly. I think for me the winner is these sort of thinner glossy magazines. They seem to actually just lift off enough of the ink to work quickly without actually having to sand too hard. So you'll probably find that you have better success with that. Right, so that's come up really nicely. And I'm just going to repeat it a little bit on this side as well. So it's okay if the stencil that you rub off is on both sides and it overlaps, it's okay. Remember, you're just breaking up this background. It's a bit like painting, you know. I don't know if you remember the old days where we used to do all these paint techniques like sponging on the wall and doing those sort of things. The color that you put on last tends to be the one that is most dominant. So for instance, if you'd painted your wall say a yellow and you didn't like it and you wanted to put a pink on top, if you sponged a pink over the yellow, you would see the pink as being the more dominant color than the yellow. And I think that's exactly what's happening here, is that you've got something that's laying on top of the image and it's just pushing it into the background a little bit, so it's giving a little bit of depth and a lot more interest. Right, so let's move this over. And if I do a bit on the tree here, you'll see that this will pop up quite quickly. Well, there you go. That's just a lovely way that you can actually distress a page. It's very subtle, but I do like it a lot. And I think I'm going to be using this quite a bit in my journals. So I will probably put at the end of this video a couple of things that I've made with these pages, just to show you what you can do. And I hope that this has just given you another way to play with paper and include it in your junk journals. Thank you for joining me. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like and please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you have any topics that you would like me to cover about junk journaling or basically any other crafts, just leave me a comment in the box below and I'm happy to actually make a video on that at some stage. Bye for now. Well, I've played around a little bit with some of the papers that I had distressed, and I'd just like to show you just a few of the simple ideas. I really only made what could be a journal card or a tag, maybe a belly band. I haven't embellished them a lot because until I know where I want to put them, I don't know what the theme will be. So I made this little card. I just used some hand decorated paper. This one I have got a video on. It's called Stamping Off, and I will link that in the description box below, because if you have got stamps, it's just another way to use them. But this I could put a little eyelet in, or I could use it as a little journaling card. This one that had the little stars on, I have again another piece of hand decorated card, and I stuck the image down and I had a little bit on the end, and I thought, what shall I do? So I've just put a little ticket on either side so that this could actually go either as an insert into something and be used as journaling space on the back, or I could actually glue it in somewhere, you know, like in between. If I had to slide it into a signature of my book, I could work with it there. This one has also hand decorated card. I get these little A5 cards from Poundland, and when I've got a little bit of paint left on over on my palette, I just paint color on. Yeah, I've done it with a couple of these. Whatever color I've got left over, I just paint on these cards and then I use them as backgrounds. So this was the one that I did with that sort of watery stencil design. I've just put a couple of stamped images on, inked it up using my walnut distress ink, and used my Stays On Black for working with the darker stamps. Yeah, so this could again be a journaling card of some sort, or a rather large tag. This one that had the lovely sort of swirly patterns on, I've just put a little bit of stamped text there and a decorated piece that you could tuck in into a tuck spot. This one I just really love. It's come out nicely, so that had that sort of uniform pattern. I've put a bit of text stamp there. And then this piece that was the stars over the garden. I don't know, some things just bring you joy, and this one for some reason brings me joy. So I just put a little bit of stamped text at the bottom, and at the back again a little bit more of that hand decorated card with the stamped off daisy technique. So just another idea for you, and yes, I'd love to hear what you think about this. So leave me a comment below. Bye for now.